What's going up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the first ever PWP Fatal 4-Way. Of course, there's only 3 of us now. Roundtable episode number 1. Let me bring in my colleagues or my panelists here. First, let's go over to Oliver. Oliver, how's it going?
Well, I'm doing good, man. How are you? And thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody for watching.
Alrighty, and Raz, how's it going tonight?
I'm good, man. And I want to thank everybody that joined us on Twitter last night. I was the guy doing Twitter last night during Takeover, and had a lot of interaction and a lot of fun with that. So, thanks everybody for that. And glad to be here.
Alright, well, we have kind of not really a jam-packed show for you, but we have a couple of topics we want to talk about tonight. Of course, we'll be doing a full kind of rundown and recap of NXT Takeover that took place on the WWE Network last night for only $9.99. But before we do that, make sure you head over to ProWrestlingPowerhouse.com. A bunch of new articles up there. We have a Sean O'Hare tribute up there. We have a bunch of stuff coming in the coming weeks. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just saying very well done tribute.
Yes, very well done. Short, but very well done. And a bunch more stuff coming up. Of course, leading into Night of Champions, we'll have a bunch of new content, probably every day, heading up at ProWrestlingPowerhouse.com. Of course, on this very YouTube channel or page, whatever you want to call it, we'll be having a little more interaction. Raz recorded his first kind of writer's thoughts. And what did you talk about, Raz?
ROH All-Star Extravaganza 6. I did
awesome.
recap
a good 15-minute video there. Of course, our owner and founder, Jay Aleto, did his own video.
I'm going to be in for every Tuesday for that writer's live video. So keep an eye out for that.
Alrighty. So let's get into it. We're running a little bit late anyway, so let's get right into it and not waste any more time. Of course, last night, NXT Takeover, like I said, on WWE Network for
$9.99.
$9.99.
Refusing to do it.
Well, we don't have the network yet, so a little different for us in England, but it was the first NXT Takeover pay-per-view that I've watched. No, I really enjoyed it. How about you two? Overall, did you enjoy it?
Do you want to kick it off, or you want me to go?
Well, let's kick it off with as far as being able, as a whole, how did you guys look at the show? And without getting into too much detail for each segment, how was the show overall for you, Raz?
Show was an 8 out of 10. I mean, it was fantastically well done. For, just the matches on the card. I thought I had no business on the card. And if anybody read my predictions there, that I can't stand Mojo Rawley. And I thought he was a waste of card space. I thought they could Bull didn't see something better. I was surprised by how they handled Kenta with the name change. Because of all, I understand that WWE is all about they want to market their own guys and as WWE guys. But of all the guys that you don't mess with, Kenta is that guy, because how many years have people been waiting for Kenta in WWE? So I was surprised and honestly ticked off by that. But yeah, the show as a whole, everybody that was on the card performed really well, did their job. I think the match of the night wasn't exactly what you would think it was. I mean, the Fatal 4-Way was great, but I think Bayley and Starlet stole it, so that was a phenomenal match.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's get into the first match of the night. The Ascension versus the Lucha Dragons, Listo and Sin Cara.
I apologize, everybody. I forgot to mute my end of it.
Alright, let's go to Oliver first on his thoughts of this kickoff match for NXT Takeover 2.
Yeah, it was a smart way to start the show, I think, because what you have is four guys that can work well and set the crowd alight. Good way to open the show. Obviously, it was a fun match, and obviously when you have championship match with the belts change hands, it's always surprising, and it's always good for the fans to see something like that. So, Kalisto and Sin Cara was a smart choice because obviously the Ascension have been the champions for a while. So, sometimes you need that change. And yeah, I was pleased. I was pleased with the opening match. I didn't catch it all, but certainly the last few minutes of it I caught, and I really enjoyed it. So I thought it was a good decision to start off with the show like that, and I thought it was a really, really solid start to Takeover myself.
All right, Raz, let's go to you next. Your overall thoughts on the kickoff match?
The kickoff match to me was a little bit of a surprise because I would have booked Charlotte and Bayley first, as the way to get the crowd involved as hot as they could be. But I understand why they wanted to promote it as two main events, because it really did belong in a secondary main event spot, which we'll get into in a minute. I really thought that Sin Cara and Kalisto, the new Ninja Dragon, shined, which was important because the Ascension is clearly ready for the main roster, and those guys have to show, particularly Kalisto, has to show WWE that he can back up the faith that they're going to have in him as a new face of the Mexican culture. So, yeah, really, really well done match. And, the thing that really drove home to me was how much better Hunico is than Mystico. I mean, he should have been that character right from the very beginning.
Well, I completely agree. I think the match was very well done, like you guys said. I did think that it was a little tough for Victor and Connor to keep up with Kalisto and Sin Cara a little bit. If you noticed in the beginning of the match and toward the middle, they had a little tough time, with some of the spots that Kalisto was doing, and I think they had a tough time keeping up with both of them. But overall, I thought the match was very well done. I thought, Kalisto and Sin Cara winning and becoming the new tag team champions was something a little odd, and it's kind of a theme throughout the show where if the champion lost, everyone was going to say, well, they're calling him up to the main roster, or they're calling them up to the main roster. And I think this is one of those instances where the only reason the Ascension lost this match was simply because I think they'll be called up to the main roster in the very near future. As far as
absolutely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, as far as Sin Cara and Kalisto goes, I don't know how long of a reign they'll have. The tag team division's a little weak right now in NXT. But there's been rumors flying around that maybe Prince Devitt and Kevin Steen will debut as a tag team because we've seen them in pictures together so much on Triple H's Instagram account and Twitter account and stuff like that. So I think overall, we'll have new champions in the very near future as far as Kalisto and Sin Cara are concerned. But go ahead, Raz. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and I apologize, I'm truly not to jump all over you, the signal's kind of weird on my end right now. I was just going to say that I think that you're absolutely right about the Ascension, and the reason that people think that, and the reason it's logical, is that that's NXT's history. When they have a guy or a paragon or a girl with a long title reign, and then the minute they lose, 2 or 3 weeks later, they're on Raw. Seth Rollins, Bo Dallas, the most recent examples. So,
I clearly agree.
I see big things for the Ascension.
Absolutely. I think it's obvious that they'll be thrown right into the tag team mix as far as champions go, and they'll soon be probably the best tag team on the WWE main roster. Let's move on to the second segment of the show. It wasn't really a match. It was kind of a squash for Baron. I forget what his name was. Baron. What was it?
Honestly, I forget the dude's last name too.
It was like Baron Corbin.
Yeah, Eron Corbin. That's it.
There you go.
Eron Corbin.
Squashed CJ Parker really quick. I really didn't expect that because he didn't even get an entrance, which was a little odd. But nonetheless, he walked away with a victory. Oliver, your initial thoughts on Baron Corbin?
Well, I don't usually approve of squashes on pay-per-view because I don't think that's what people want. I don't think that's what people want to see at a pay-per-view. I didn't actually catch all of the matches; it was pretty quick, so it was over quite soon. I don't watch NXT religiously. I watch most of NXT most of the time, so I haven't really got too much to say about Corbett the match. But honestly, a squash on pay-per-view, even something like NXT Takeover, I don't like seeing squashes on a pay-per-view. So I don't know if you two agree with me, Raz. I mean, do you think it should have been booked that way?
I wouldn't have booked it that way, but I think what they're trying to do is show that this guy is going to be a new main player in NXT, which I don't know if I agree with that or not. And the reason I say that is because every time you try to push a guy that size, you're so limited in terms of what you can do. Unless Corbin has tremendous mic skills, I just don't see a very high ceiling for him. But what the booking itself reminded me of, the fact, Eron pointed out he's got no entrance. The match is like 30 seconds long. What it reminded me of the most was what WCW did with Goldberg. The way that Goldberg came in as an unknown, and then all of a sudden he was just running all over everybody. So maybe that's their goal, is that Corbin's actually going to be the guy to dethrone Neville. But I really, really hope that better talents like Sami Zayn and Kenta and the yet to debut Kevin Steen don't get screwed because of that. I really, really hope that's not the case. But we'll see.
And that's a good point as far as where he'll fit in the mix of talent on NXT. I think it was a smart move to kind of, and like you said, Oliver, squash matches aren't really entertaining on pay-per-views, but it definitely made an impact. I think if you had him just debut on a rinky-dink episode of NXT, I don't know if that would have had the same impact. I think if you were on Twitter, I know Raz was tweeting all night for PWP.
Well,
it was a big impact. It was something that you saw where it was something that just came out of nowhere. No one really expected it. Like I said, he didn't get an entrance, and he just completely squashed an established superstar on NXT. So that was very telling as far as what they want to do with him in the future.
Yeah. I did it again. I apologize. I don't know what's going on with my signal right now. Maybe I need to adjust my headphones or something. But I think Aaron's finished and he's still talking. There's a delay going on with me. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting what they do with him. And I think Oliver, what he said, that was the reaction on Twitter. He talked about what happened on Twitter last night. That match was literally so short that I didn't even get a chance to react to it before they started the next one, because I'm tweeting on the Android trying to keep up with all the action, and by the time I look up, that match is over. So I was commenting on the end of that match and going right in to the start of the hair versus hair match. That's how quick it was. So that was a big surprise. And we'll just have to wait and see where it goes with him.
I completely agree. I think he'll eventually move up the ladder as far as NXT singles competitors go. I don't know if he'll be thrown into the world title picture, but I think he'll be on NXT for about a month, probably in squash matches. Let's move on to the third match of the night, or the third segment of the night. Enzo Amore versus Sylvester Lefort in a hair versus hair match. Let's go to Raz first. Raz, your initial thoughts and your overall thoughts on this match.
Initial thoughts was that they didn't do smart booking. I called what the smart booking would have been, which was a heel turn from Colin Cassidy, because both these guys are better apart right now than they are as a team, and I don't understand the logic at all behind having them as a team. But as far as what they did with the segment, it was exactly the way this team is presented. The New York, New Jersey, how you doing, guys? I mean, it was basically a glorified comedy segment with the bucket and the quick hair loss. And the fact that the wrong guy lost his hair, I thought was a really nice touch. I did not see that coming, and I think it makes Sylvester Lefort look like an absolute jerk, and it's going to lead to him being an absolute prick of a heel, which could be really interesting. Ollie?
Oliver, what were your thoughts overall?
I really enjoyed this segment, actually. I watched it and was, pretty interested in it, because I thought I predicted wrong, as Raz was saying. They threw a little curveball out there, and they shaved the wrong guy, which is always something different to watch and different to see. So I was pleased with the little turn they went for there. I really enjoy Amore. He's good on the mic. The catchphrases, I think they're really getting over down in NXT. And if they bring him up to the main roster, soon or whenever they bring him up, I think it'll be a good addition to WWE, because what you have somebody who's comfortable and competent on the mic, and WWE are always looking for people like this to come into the roster. So I think it shows that match, and that what they do on the mic, what they do in the ring, that to me is something WWE could do with more. So I'm looking forward to see more of these two. I enjoyed the segment, and like Raz says, I didn't predict the ending either. So, and a surprise, like I've always said, surprises are always good in wrestling. So I thought it was a good segment, and did you like it?
I loved it. I'm a huge fan of Enzo Amore. I think he has the it factor as far as charisma goes. His in-ring work still needs a little work. He doesn't really have a move set. He doesn't really fit into a certain mold as far as in-ring work goes. But I think his personality with Big Cass's, physicality and ability in the ring, I think they're a perfect tag team. I think you have a storyline within that group for eventually a heel turn from Big Cass. But that's somewhere down the line if they decide to move on with this group long term. I remember reading Raz's article on the predictions, and he said that he doesn't really remember this group because he started watching when the network he started watching NXT when the network was available. For people that is similar to Raz and didn't watch them before, this group was really hot as far as the tag team goes before Enzo got hurt. They're, like you said, Oliver, they're super over as far as catchphrases go, and I laugh every time they come out because I'm pretty close to New Jersey, and I understand what that comedy is, why that's funny. Somebody that lives in LA or maybe in Australia, maybe doesn't get why that's funny, but I do. I completely love their gimmick, and let's throw a question out to you guys. What's their potential long term for each guy, Cass and Enzo? Let's go to you, Oliver, first.
Big Cassie, I think he has less potential, honestly. I think he reminds me of something like if you remember Big Andy winning Tough Enough a few years back, he reminds me of him slightly. I mean, he looks a little better. He looks like he has more charisma. Big Cassie to me looks like a generic repackaged big guy that won't go anywhere, like a Matt Morgan type thing. Although I do have high hopes for Amore, because I think, as I was saying before about him, being really good on the mic. WWE always, you need guys around because they're entertaining. So I think definitely if you were to stick Amore and if you were to elevate him to the main roster right now, I think he'd make a good mid-card feud. He'd make a good Intercontinental Championship feud or United States Championship feud right now. And I think that I'm not saying that's the highest he could go, but looking at it short term, I think that's what I see it with those two guys.
I completely agree. I think I remember seeing something on Twitter as far as what Big Cass looks like. I forget what the exact quote was, but I think somebody said that he looks like Edge on crack, which I think was a nice touch. Raz, let's go to you. What are their potential individually?
Well, first of all, I just want to backtrack for a quick second. You hit the nail on the head when you talked about me and my accessibility to NXT. I didn't have Hulu before the network. I didn't have access to the channel that broadcast FCW before it was NXT. So I just had not seen them work together as a team. And what I saw and what I still see is that Colin Cassidy was doing a heck of a job, to me, for a guy his size, with, what's limited with a guy that size in terms of mobility and what he can bring to the table. Colin Cassidy is one of the more entertaining big men I've seen in a long time. And so to me, from an outsider's perspective, I felt like he was being held back when Enzo came back. And that's how I feel now. Not that the tag team itself isn't strong, because it's very strong. And it has good potential, especially if they go to the main roster, they could do a lot of good things there. But the problem is that Colin just gets completely overshadowed by Enzo, because everything you guys have said about Enzo is dead on. Tremendous mic skills, has a crowd in the palm of his hand, and can really go in the ring. I mean, Sylvester LaForte didn't give him much to work with, but that was the first time I'd seen him in competition, actually, and the guy has phenomenal ability in the ring. So I definitely see him, just like Ollie said. He's a future mid-card player right from the beginning, and, Money in the Bank in 2 or 3 years. That's how good Enzo Amore is.
And from what I understand, he's very, very, he's held very high up in, of course, Triple H's eyes. Apparently they're kind of like workout buddies. They go to the same gym. So that's something that can definitely be in his favor if he wants to align himself with Triple H. There's a whole, I guess, group of Triple H guys, you could say, like Damian Sandow, Sheamus, those kind of guys that Triple H has personally pushed, Bray Wyatt, guys like that. So I think that's another strong point in his favor as far as if he gets eventually pushed up to the main roster and what they do with him. Let's move on to the fourth match of the night. Bull Dempsey versus Mojo Rawley. I'm going to throw it to Raz because I know that he is just chomping at the bit to talk about this one.
Absolutely. Bull Dempsey has the potential to be something interesting. He reminds me a little bit of a lesser version of ROH's Unbreakable Michael Elgin. A guy that is big but actually knows he's big and doesn't try to do a lot and has worked on his mic skills. And if Bull Dempsey works on his mic skills, he could be something. But Mojo Rawley, that guy has zero charisma. And he reminds me, I said it in my column, and I apologize for repeating myself, but I just can't think of a better way to say it. It's the typical WWE thing that they do of, this is a well-toned big guy with athletic ability from another sport. Let's just throw him in wrestling and see what he does. Like, throw him in the deep end with no real training and just expect him to get over. And they stuck him with the most ridiculous catchphrase ever. I mean, what the heck does "I don't get hyped, I stay hyped" even mean? What does that mean? So, yeah, I'm just not a fan of Mojo Rawley at all. I don't wish ill will on anybody that's trying to be in this business, having spent time on the indie scene. I appreciate the culture completely, and, if he proves me wrong, I'll praise him for it, and I'll be in his corner for it. But right now, every time Mojo Rawley comes on my screen, I just want to barf or turn off the network. One of the two.
So that's as clear as you can possibly get as far as feelings on somebody. I felt like, and me and Joel were going to have this debate on here, but of course my co-editor Joel Bryan could not be here tonight due to a emergency, so hopefully everything's okay with him. But we were going to debate about Bull Dempsey, and he hates Bull Dempsey. He thinks Bull Dempsey is quote-unquote as average as it gets, and I feel completely different. I think Bull Dempsey has a bunch of potential as far as what he's able to do, and I really like the comparison you made, Raz, of Michael Elgin. I think that's a really strong comparison. Of course, he doesn't have the same build as Elgin muscle-wise, but I think Bull can definitely be a throwback and somebody that can truly, like a Cesaro type. Now, I know Cesaro is, a freakishly amazing athlete, but
absolutely.
Yeah, but I think Bull has potential, and people kind of labeling him as average and not being able to work, and why is he in this spot? I don't see why not. I think he's one of the best raw talents they have on NXT. Oliver, let's go to you on what are your thoughts on this match?
Okay, so let me break this down for you both. You remember when Ryback debuted? He got Goldberg chants for ages.
Right.
Okay, so what we have here, what you have with Bald MC is essentially you have Rhino. You have Rhino version 2, and Mojo Rawley is completely, he's nothing. Mojo Rawley is one of the worst things in all of WWE right now. He has absolutely nothing. Mojo Rawley is, you use the term in America, you say he sucks. So yeah, let's go with that. Mojo Rawley sucks. Let's say Bald MC, I look at him, and I actually agree with Joe. I don't think he's bad, but he is pretty average to me. And I think of Rhino whenever I look at him. He looks exactly like Rhino. He's the spitting image of Rhino, and Rhino was pretty good for quite a while. So if he exceeds to that, if he gets to that level or exceeds it, then he's done brilliantly. I don't expect or hope for much from either of the men, especially Brawley. His catchphrase, as Raz said, is horrible. His look is okay. There's nothing awful about his look, but
his look is always cackling.
The way he carries himself, there's nothing special about him at all. So, Bald MC is the better of the two by a mile, but both men for me won't get too high.
Okay, well, I really don't want to waste a lot of time on a segment that you shouldn't waste a lot of time on, but let me just play devil's advocate with Oliver for a second here. Don't you think that Aaron and I have a point where the guy has to have time to work and grow? Because he hasn't had that. Like, we don't know what he's going to bring because he literally just debuted like a month ago. So
well,
I think, yeah.
Everybody needs time right from day one. I'm judging him based on what I've seen so far. I'm not saying he can't be anything. I'm saying if he gets to that level where he's something, and if he gets to a level where he succeeds and does well, then all the more power to him. He's done very well. But thus far, I haven't seen enough to be kind of taken back or really pleased, really excited about this guy. I'm not saying he's going to do really badly. Do I think he's going to be a world champion? No, I don't.
No, absolutely. I don't think he's going to be a world champion either, but I don't think he's average, and that's what I was saying. Again, if you look at a guy like Michael Hogan, he reminds me of the type of guy that has the potential, especially if Triple H works it with him, which I've heard that he's another guy like Enzo that Triple H is high on. If he pulls Dempsey aside and says, okay, this is what you're good at, work with this and don't go beyond this, Dempsey has the potential of not just becoming another big man, but it all depends on how serious he is about it and what WWE does with it. So I think my point was it's just too quick to judge, but I completely agree with what you said. Right now he's not there, but he could be.
Well, both of you made really good points. I don't know, and I don't like to label somebody as they'll never be a world champion and they'll never do this, they'll never do that, because we've been proven wrong thousands of times as far as who is world champion material, who will be world champion. Nobody thought Rey Mysterio would ever be world champion. Nobody thought Daniel Bryan would ever be world champion. So we've got to be careful on what we say as far as this guy will never or this guy will never be or something along those lines. But I do get your point, Oliver, as far as, when you look at him at face value, you see something average. But once you see him work and the potential he could have, I completely think that he could be a main event talent if booked the right way and presented the right way.
Yeah, and that's the key. That's all I was just going to say that's the key. You hit the nail on the head. It's just all about potential with Bull. And we have nothing else to go on as far as that goes.
I agree with you. Let's move on to the next segment that was part of NXT Takeover. The debut, not the debut, but the arrival of Kenta. We kind of saw him be presented by the general manager of NXT, William Regal. We found out that his name is now, I keep forgetting his name. What is his name again?
His name is Hideo Itami.
Hideo Itami. I'm going to have to get used to that because I think Kenta is just really simple. And, this is a classic, case of WWE trying to put their own stamp on things and putting their own label on, somebody that's famous elsewhere. But we'll get to that soon. Kenta kind of talked a little bit about, being in NXT, or tried to talk about being in NXT. Then interrupted by the Ascension. The Ascension coming down, which kind of didn't make much sense to me. Coming down to kind of, I guess, want their rematch from William Regal. Kenta kind of showed a little bit of what he can do. Overall, I thought the segment was a little lackluster as far as what I was expecting. I expected a run-in. I think that's clear. I think we all kind of expected somebody to run in and kind of interrupt it, because it wouldn't make sense for him to just come out there and talk. But the Ascension kind of, and this is why I think they'll be called up to the main roster. The biggest reason why is because you've pretty much taken away all of their build for a year. They lost their tag titles, and then you have them kind of quote unquote get pushed aside by one man. So I think this is definitely signs that the Ascension is on their way to the WWE main roster. But let's go you, Oliver, first. Your overall thoughts on Kenta, or Hideo Itami.
Okay, yeah, so I really enjoyed the segment. First of all, I was so thankful that it was William Regal that introduced him instead of Ric Flair. Firstly, obviously, Regal is a fellow countryman, but also, he's done so much for wrestling. I just enjoy seeing him. Ric Flair, I was glad that Ric Flair didn't turn up because I don't like him. But with the whole Kenta thing, I thought his introduction was good because he looked strong in the process. He looked strong in the segment. I thought he did well for his promo. It was a simple thing. He only came off with a few sentences, but he did well. And the name change, obviously, I wasn't expecting a name change. I was expecting a name change for the other two, but not with Kenta. I thought they'd stick with Kenta. Obviously, they haven't. So Hideo Itami is actually quite hard to remember, which could be a downfall. But obviously, people will acclimatise to that. I enjoyed the fact that it was the Ascension who interrupted, because straight after dropping their titles, it gives them something to do. It gives them a program to be thrust into before, as you say, taken to the main roster. So I enjoyed the segment, and I thought Kenta looked really, really strong coming off of it, and I think it was a good way to bring him in and to have him settle in.
All right, Raz, let's go to you next. Your overall thoughts on Hideo Itami.
Well, first of all, I hate that. I understand that WWE, in their mind, has to do this. They have to reestablish a guy as a WWE guy and market it their own way. But they sent freaking Hulk Hogan to Japan because they pretended like they got what a big deal this is. Kenta's a guy that people have been waiting roughly 10 years for. I mean, this is a guy that, you want to know how good this guy is and how big this guy is? The GTS by that guy that walked out of the company? That's not his move. That's Kenta's move. He stole it from Kenta. So, bottom line is that they really dropped the ball with the whole name change thing. But as far as his skill goes, he did perfectly, because he didn't have a match. They have to build up his debut match, which they've already done by saying it's going to be next week. And he was in there with two guys that, like Aaron said, are ready to transition and ready to do other things, and he dominated two of the big faces of NXT in the process. So the segment itself was really well done, but like Aaron said, the biggest thing for me was I was hoping and praying for either Kevin Steen or Prince Devitt or both to come out and say, this isn't just your show, Kenta, this is all three of our shows. Because all three of those guys have huge followings, Steen in particular. I'm surprised, because from the interaction that I've gotten on Facebook and Twitter, both on my solo account and since joining PWP, has been people more excited for Steen than Kenta, which I did not see coming. So they really dropped the ball in terms of that, I think, by not at least letting those two just come in and look at Kenta in the face. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
I kind of agree with you as far as the Steen and Devitt thing, where I think, having them come out would have been something a lot more interesting than what we saw. But I do understand that they kind of want to keep everyone separate, and they don't want to, show their hand prematurely, just give all their cards in. So I think we'll eventually see those guys, and hopefully, they don't mess up with either of them. The one thing with the Kenta and Hideo Tommy name thing is I think people will still call him Kenta. I think even after the little run-in they had with the Ascension, people were chanting Kenta. So I think it's going to take a little while until he sheds that name, if ever. And WWE has to understand that if that name does not go eventually, and the fans stop calling him Kenta, if they continue to do so, they have to be open to adopting that name back into his name somehow. You can call him Hideo Kenta Tommy, with little quotations around Kenta. You can do something along those lines because similar to the Husky Harris and Bray Wyatt thing, when he first debuted, people called him Husky Harris, and weeks after they called him Husky Harris. Eventually it shut it off, but I don't know, as far as Kenta goes, and like Oliver said, the name is hard to remember, so, people I think will still call him Kenta. Let's move on to the fifth match, or the fifth segment of the night, or fifth, whatever you want to call it.
Can I just do one other quick thought on Kenta? I think the biggest problem with the name they chose is, like we're all saying, it's hard to remember, and it's not a Bryan Danielson, it's Daniel Bryan type thing. Like when they changed his name was easy to remember and easy to pick up on because they paid attention to his history and they just reversed his first and last name. That makes perfect sense. When a guy has one established name and nothing else, it makes it a lot harder to re-identify him. And so I think Hammond hit the nail on the head. I'd be very, very surprised if he's able to be successfully re-identified.
I completely agree. Like I said, let's move on to the Divas match. Charlotte versus Bayley, an interesting match nonetheless, but I thought personally it really, really came under my expectations. I thought it was going to be a similar match to Natalya and Charlotte back at the first NXT Takeover. That was far from the case. I think this match was sloppy in essence. I thought Bayley and Charlotte either weren't connecting with chemistry or they weren't working together well. I don't know what it was, but for me personally, I didn't feel like this match delivered what it could have. I think the potential was so high for this match, and it really kind of fell short for me. Oliver, what are your thoughts on this match?
I'm not completely sure I understand why your expectations were as high in the first place, because the reason why I say that is because Bayley is nowhere near as good a wrestler as Natalya is. Natalya is an experienced veteran, and she's one of the best female talents we've seen in years in terms of wrestling ability. So when you have Natalya versus Charlotte, and you have a great match, and it was a great match. It was actually I actually think it was one of the best matches we've seen all year, which is crazy. But Bayley and Charlotte, I thought was a decent match. It was 6 out of 10, something like that. And I was relatively pleased with it. I didn't expect it to be as good, like I said, but it was enjoyable. It wasn't the worst match at the pay-per-view, and I expected Charlotte to win because I know we interacted over Twitter a little bit, and we both agree that Charlotte's time isn't quite yet. It's coming soon. A few months' time, she'll be brought up to the roster. She's not ready yet, and I thought that kind of showed towards the end of her match. She made a couple of little errors. And I think she needs to improve on her game slightly before she's brought up. But as far as Bayley goes, I think she's doing okay. I don't think Bayley did a bad job in the match at all. I just think she's not as good as Natalya. The match wasn't as good as people may have expected it to be. So I mean, it was what it was. I thought it was an enjoyable match. It wasn't a great match, but honestly, both can improve, but both are doing well.
Raz, let's go to you next. Your overall thoughts on this match?
Okay, well, the match itself was very well done because it's what Oliver said. Bayley is nowhere near the level of Natalya, and you can't expect that kind of chemistry between in a match, where you have a match between two competitors where one is up here and the other is down here, and that's what you had. Or hold on, I think I cut off my hand. One is up here, and the other's down here. That's what you had in terms of this match, in my opinion. You have Charlotte, who's just in a whole other league compared to everybody on that roster. And I do mean everybody, because I'm including all the singles males right now, other than Sami Zayn. And you have Bayley, who's trying to get there and is working with the perfect person to get there, but is nowhere near there yet. And I think what the match suffered from, because Aaron's right, the match did suffer a little bit, and it did get boring at points, and it did feel like it should have ended maybe 10 minutes before it did. And the reason for that is because it was one-sided toward the end. Charlotte was completely carrying the match, and Bayley had run out of steam. And anytime that happens, the talent that's carrying the match is going to struggle. And I think that's why the turnbuckle shot in the match was so vicious, because Charlotte had to send a message, okay, Bayley can't fight back anymore because I'm just going to take her head off. So as far as the way the match was presented, I thought it was great, except it's a little bit too long. Now, are we ready to actually get into what I disagree with you two guys about, and the fact that we have different opinions on Charlotte completely?
Well, we kind of touched on this a little bit on Twitter, and I think Charlotte, and I have a whole piece coming out later on tonight on why she's not ready for the main roster, and she proved it at NXT Takeover 2. Listen, I'm the bandwagon leader when it comes to Charlotte and what she has become in little over a year. You got to remember, she goes from debuting in 2013, the summer of 2013, to now being the best women's wrestler in the company. And I even put WWE Divas in that list because she has just skyrocketed through the Divas division in talent alone. In 1 year, she's become, the best. And I think that really goes to the training she has around her with the trainers down at NXT. I think, of course, her father has something to do with that, just the pure genetics of wrestling. But here's where I think she proved or that she's not ready for the main roster. When you have a big-time match like this on a big-time stage for, you're showcasing your brand, you're showcasing NXT, you're showcasing the Divas division, and you're put in a match with Bayley, who, like Oliver said, isn't quite there yet as far as her in-ring performance goes. Nonetheless, she's a good wrestler, but she's not where Charlotte is right now. So the blame has to fall on Charlotte's shoulders for why that match wasn't very good, because she is the best, and she's claimed to be the best, and many believe that she is the best. So I believe that as far as some of the technical mistakes she made, she screwed up on the moonsault, which looked very bad, and WWE did not replay it, which rightfully so. I mean, it was not very good. She kind of screwed up on her finishing maneuver. The match lacked, like you said, got very boring here and there, and I think a portion of that blame has to go to Charlotte and proving that she's just quite not ready to be in front of 15,000 people on Monday Night Raw with Paige, with AJ, and women like that.
All right, well, I'll let Oliver go because he agrees with you, so I want to see if he can add anything to the negative Charlotte opinion before I get into this. Because I want to listen to everything everybody has to say.
Okay.
So.
Well, obviously, it's important to point out that Charlotte has one of the best legacies available right now. I mean, the daughter of Ric Flair. I mean, as I say, I don't like Ric Flair, but you can't deny what he's done and who he is. Charlotte has definitely learned from the best, which has helped to guide her, helped to helped her transformation, her growth. And I'm pleased with Charlotte. I'm aware that she's, I agree with Eron. I don't think she's quite there yet. And the reason why I say that is because I just don't think she's at that level where she can completely connect with the crowd. I don't think she's at that level where she can have consistent, great matches. That's not to say that everybody that is on the roster can do that, because that's not the case as well, obviously. I just think Charlotte needs a little bit more fine-tuning. And honestly, while she's head and shoulders above everybody else in NXT right now, as far as women go, I think Charlotte, to me, needs a little more work on, interacting with the crowd. It's almost like she's in her own mind. She's there on her own. There's no one around her. So honestly, Charlotte is getting there. I think 2015 is her year, and 2015 after Mania, I think she'll be brought up to the roster and she'll be allowed to flourish. So right now, I would keep her in NXT just to fine tune her, just to tweak her somewhat, and then I think she'll be great and she'll be ready to go. So go for it, Raz.
Okay. Well, here's why I would bring up Charlotte now. First of all, you talked about that she's not quite there in terms of connecting with the crowd. Did you see, either of you, the promo that she caught on NXT Fallout? Takeover Fallout.
Yeah.
I did, and if that's gonna kind of if that's what you're going to show us as far as, or what you're going to allude to as far as her being ready for the roster, I don't think so. I mean, that segment was just awkward and uncomfortable. And
No. I'm not saying that's the highlight to say that she's ready for the roster. I'm saying that she has not been allowed to talk a lot because heels don't say a lot. Heels just let their actions speak for themselves. I think what she showed was that she has the potential, under the right circumstances, to do something on the mic. She was really nervous there and was working with two girls that weren't on her level. But I think that she has the potential to grow into good mic skills. And the other thing you guys seem to be forgetting, in my opinion, is that it takes two to tango in a match. And we've talked about it already. Bayley is not on Charlotte's level. So to say that it's all on Charlotte is unfair. Is a lot of it on her? Yeah, because she is the stronger competitor and it is her responsibility to show that. But if you had a girl in there that was just a little bit more on her level, I honestly can't remember her name, but the girl that I would have put her in this match with is the Irish girl with the red hair and the green.
Sheamus.
No, not Sheamus. There's
Becky Lynch.
Becky Lynch. There you go. Thank you, Aaron.
Finley.
Yeah, Becky Lynch would have been a better choice because Becky Lynch is a little bit more skilled than Charlotte, and it's a whole lot easier to work when you don't have to carry a match by yourself. So just think about this. Just think outside the box a minute. How frustrated do we get with the main roster right now? Because the only true athletes that we have are AJ Lee and Paige. You bring Charlotte up, you've got another really good athlete that if you put her in there with those other two athletes, because that's what she's going to do. She's going to get in there with girls that are on her level in the beginning and not try to carry matches. You put her in a feud with either AJ, Paige, or both. You have the balancing of the two talents, and you show how good Charlotte is. And the biggest thing, Charlotte doesn't have to be completely there in terms of mic skills right now. Why? Because she's got her dad. You do what you should have done right from the very beginning with her. Don't just call her Charlotte and mention offhandedly that she's Ric Flair's daughter. Play into that legacy. Name her Charlotte Flair. Stick her with her dad. Make her into like a female Arn Anderson in the beginning. And then when she's ready for her mic skills to blossom, she'll show it and she'll go to the stratosphere. But I don't think that there's enough of a reason to hold her back right now because she's leading NXT when she should be helping the main roster of WWE. The Divas division has got to look stronger than it does now because when you get people that are going to follow Charlotte, like a Bayley in a year, like a Sasha Banks in a year, like an Alexa Bliss, and possibly even Becky Lynch in a year, you're going to get so many girls that are closer to being real wrestling talent, which is such a changeover from what we've seen the last several years, that people aren't going to be able to be used to seeing that kind of a thing, because they're used to the total divas crap being shoved down their throat. That's why I think Charlotte is so important right now. The more skill you can show to the massive audience, the better. Is she perfect? No. But is she more ready than a lot of people we've seen come up too soon? Absolutely.
I actually understand what
That's
you're
just
saying,
my opinion.
especially with the whole playing into the Ric Flair connection, because that would make sense and would help to get her over. Although you did say one thing which I strongly disagree with. You said that it's the heels that don't talk very much, but I disagree. I think it's the heels that do all the talking in wrestling. I think most talking is done by heels, and the baby faces are the ones which let their actions speak for themselves. That's what I think personally. Eron, do you agree?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's a mixed bag of tricks. I think some, and I think if we can't just put a blanket statement that all heels don't talk and all heels do talk and all baby faces don't talk. I think there's a mixture of both. But I would say that predominantly you do see heels talk a little more. I think you do see people like a Paul Heyman, people like that, heels that are genuine heels, talk the most often. What's going on?
No, I was just going to say that I'm going to check my Android for a minute, because I think that might be somebody in the audience trying to chime in, because I was looking at the YouTube feed a second ago. But, so you guys go on for a minute while I go off camera for a second.
Well, like I said, I think you kind of made my point on some level where you even admitted that she's not ready to talk right now. And I don't know how much of a help Ric Flair would be in talking. I mean, he has to, and I don't know if you've noticed, but if you see him on the panels, if you see him on the pre-show stuff, he kind of needs to be tamed and needs to kind of almost be told what to say, because, and I don't know what's wrong with Rick. I love Ric Flair. I really do. I think he's one of the best, wrestlers of all time, and there's no disputing his resume and all that stuff. But right now, and this is a different topic for a different day, I don't think Ric Flair's ready to or should be a regular fixture on WWE TV. I don't think he can hang in there as far as his mic work, because he kind of goes off on tangents. Even with some of the segments we've seen recently, he kind of just goes off in his own little world, and it's a little odd.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. Ric Flair, whenever he's brought back now, he goes off on these tangents, and what he says and what he does, it just doesn't seem appropriate for what he's doing and for the segment he's in. And we obviously disagree on Ric Flair. We obviously both have to agree on what he's done for wrestling and who he is. But I agree with you when you say he doesn't need to be around anymore. He doesn't need to be around anymore. I think Charlotte can get over on her own, provided she has that help around her, and provided that the writers help her out and do their best for her. Ric Flair does not need to be at her side. It doesn't matter if they're father and daughter. I mean, who cares? It doesn't matter. There's so much space. They're so different. Not just age-wise, but just in every aspect. I don't think Ric Flair needs to be there with her. And you saying about he doesn't need to be, on WWE television, and I completely agree, because whenever he is there, he's just I don't know. I just don't find him entertaining. He looks really old. He doesn't look good at all now. And when he said how he acts and how he behaves and how he speaks on television, it just doesn't seem to fit in. It's like, here's Ric Flair and here's the rest of the product, and this is what he's doing. And yeah, I agree. I don't think Ric Flair needs to be around much anymore.
Yeah, I've been a big proponent, and this is one of the biggest things why I think Curtis Axel has kind of failed in his kind of role on the main roster, is when you try to put somebody's father or whatever behind them and say, well, this is Kurt Hennig's son. This is why you should like him, because he's Kurt Hennig's son. That doesn't work, because we've seen with Bray Wyatt, they've made no mention, they've made no hint at being IRS's son. They've made they don't talk about Bo Dallas and him being brothers. They let Bray Wyatt have his own identity, and that's why I think Charlotte, when she does eventually get to the main roster, shouldn't take on Flair's identity. I don't see why she has to be named Charlotte Flair, like you said, Raz, because I think that she needs to carve her own identity. And I think even having Ric Flair's woo in her theme song kind of takes away from her. And I'm a big proponent of letting sons or daughters or relatives of a bigger star, let them shine on their own. Don't give them a crutch. Don't give them something to hold on to. Don't give them something to get over with the fans. Let them be their own superstar.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. I couldn't disagree with you at all. There's, what you just said is perfectly true, because when you have a legacy and you have somebody who joins that legacy, whether it be a son or a daughter, they need to make it on their own, just like the predecessor, their predecessor did. So it doesn't matter who your dad is, who your brother is. Sometimes it makes sense for it not to be mentioned. It makes sense that they don't mention Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas together. Sometimes it does make sense for them to be mentioned. So I'm talking about so Kane and the Undertaker. I know they're not related in real life, but for years they were always mentioned every now and then as being brothers, and it kind of worked, even if they were doing nothing together. But yeah, you're right about Charlotte completely, and I completely agree with you.
Okay, well, I listened to everything while I was checking fan interaction, and shout out to my buddy Brennan. He was commenting on the fact that there's a bad echo going on right now, and we've tried everything we can to control that. And unfortunately, I think tonight it is just what it is. Hopefully, we'll get better as time goes on with that. I listened to everything you guys had to say, and I have to admit that you made some really strong points in terms of establishing your own identity. But don't you think that you can establish your own identity while still paying attention to legacy? I think that Ric Flair's woo is good for the crowd. I think paying attention to who Charlotte is good for the crowd, because it gives the crowd something to latch on to. Ollie and I had kind of a semi-debate last week when we were planning out how we were going to do these things about chanting and when chanting is okay and when chanting isn't okay. Charlotte's identity is basically the lesser form of a chant right now for the WWE Universe. And I think that's why you tap into the Flair name. Now, what you said about Ric Flair not being really strong right now, I gotta admit, I hadn't really thought about that. His promo skills have really been struggling a lot lately. So what you could do, I talked about Charlotte being like a female Arn Anderson. So what you could do is have Ric Flair just be the J.J. Dillon type, where he doesn't say a lot because he's more of the manager. Then you could stick Charlotte with a guy like Paul Heyman, or maybe you turn Zeb Coulter back into, what's his name? Can't think of his name right now. His real name.
Dutch Mantel.
Dutch Mantel. Thank you. You let him become Dutch Mantel again, and you allow him to showcase his mic skills, and use that to help Charlotte get over. And Charlotte still establishes an identity without necessarily making it all about being Ric Flair's daughter, but at the same time you don't ignore it either. That's my biggest thing, and everything you guys said is right. And Charlotte could probably, benefit from more time down in NXT. But my biggest thing is the main roster, the Divas roster in WWE, is hurting so bad right now that I just think Charlotte can help it. And you can cover up all the shortcomings that Charlotte has if you do it right. That's all I wanted to say. I'm not disagreeing with any of the points you're making because they're dead on. But I just think that you're making a mistake by not bringing up somebody that's good enough to help the main roster right now.
Well, that's fair. I mean, that's completely fair. And I think we kind of touched base on a lot of issues, and maybe just some small issues that we kind of disagree on. But we'll have to agree to disagree. Let's move on to the Fatal 4-Way, the main event. In my opinion, the best match of the night. I think everyone kind of agrees with that. I think having Adrian Neville win in the end, and winning questionably, winning in a heel-ish type of way. Let's go to you, Raz, first. Your overall thoughts on the Fatal 4-Way.
Well, the way it was booked was exactly the way you book a match like this, because it's exactly what I said in my predictions. It's these 4 guys going balls to the walls, holding nothing back, and reminding the crowd what real wrestling is. I mean, they chanted it all night. This is awesome. This is wrestling, because that's exactly what it is. What we saw last night in the main event of NXT is basically what you see in ROH every week. I mean, it was just an absolutely bell-to-bell clinic from all 4 guys. And who really, really impressed me was Tyler Breeze. I know how strong Sami Zayn is. I know how strong Adrian Neville is. I know how strong Tyson Kidd is, because he's been around for years. But I kind of thought that Tyler Breeze was a guy that they were just throwing in there in the NXT title picture because he has a unique gimmick that we haven't seen before, that is really playing off the current culture a lot. And I thought that they were just trying not to make it so obvious that Sami Zayn was going to walk away with the championship. And I kind of spoiled the ending, so I'll save that from we get into the main discussion. I didn't mean to do that. But you know, my point was I didn't really understand why Breeze was in the mix, but last night he showed me why he's in the mix. Breeze held his own fairly well. He was still outshined by the 3 guys he was in the ring with, but he didn't look out of place for most of the match, and so that's the highest praise I can give him. So I really enjoyed everything about the match, except for the ending, because I didn't agree with how it was booked. But I'll let you guys give your overall, or I'll let Ollie give his overall impression, and then we'll get into that.
All right, Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, it was a really, really good match, definitely. I must admit I was forward in that I thought Sami Zayn was winning. I was convinced that Sami Zayn would win the match. I didn't think there would be a case of Neville retaining, because when you have 4 guys and the champion retains, it doesn't really offer up too many storyline possibilities going forward after that, because the champion's taken out 3 contenders. So I don't like it usually when champions retain in a big man match, but obviously that's happened, so now we have to go on from that. I thought it was a really, really good match. Obviously my favourite spot was the suplex off the turnbuckle with all 4 men. It was a great spot. One of my favourite spots for ages, actually. And I think what you have now with the arrivals of Kenta, Devitt, and Steen, you have fresh contenders. You have people that fans will want to see in that picture, in the title picture. So I think what WWE should do, or should have done, is they should have taken the belt off of Neville, put it on Zayn, who also deserves it, who's also very good. And they should have. I think Neville is now ready. Take Neville and Tyson Kidd up to the main roster, and I genuinely think they're ready to go there now. I think Zayn would be a good champion at this point. Raz was right talking about Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze did a real good job. So at this point, with all these new, contenders coming into NXT, you really now have to explore other possibilities. You have to test out different matches, different competitors into the waters, if you know what I mean. So I thought the match was fantastic. Honestly, one of my favourite matches all year. I just kind of got the feeling that Sami Zayn should have won. I don't know, Aaron, if you agree with that thought process, but I wouldn't have booked Neville to win, and I thought that would have been the perfect match for would have been a perfect swan song for that championship, and have Zayn win, setting up a small Zayn Neville feud for a few weeks, couple of months before moving on to the stage where you bring Neville up to the main roster and have Zayn fight off your Kentas, your Steens, your Devitts, Tyler Breezes, whatever. So that was that's what I think. I think the match was great. And Aaron, did you see Zayn winning like me?
I predicted before the match started that Zayn was going to win, or Breeze. I thought one of the two was going to win, but I understand why they did it. I understand they obviously don't feel like Neville's ready for the main roster, and I think and I don't think he is either. I think he got a nice little pop on Raw, which we'll talk about a little later on. But I think he's just not ready as far as his personality and his character goes. He's a phenomenal in-ring talent. I mean, he can go with anybody. But his character is going to need a lot of work before he gets to the main roster. He cannot talk to save his life. And that's obviously the biggest reason, that's one of the biggest, I think we talked about it, Oliver, on our little test show where we said not a lot of top guys get to the top without being able to talk. And I think that's the case with Neville. I think he needs to be able to talk. He can't talk right now. No offense about the English accent, but that doesn't really help him as far as being a babyface goes in America. So I don't know what they'll be able to do with him, if they'll give him a manager, if they'll do something.
Well, actually, if I can just add something on quickly, sorry. What I would do if I'm booking, I take Neville. I say, okay, I have Neville and Tyson Kidd back up on the main roster, and I actually want Neville to bring back. This might sound crazy, but I actually think it would be good if WWE brought back the Cruiserweight Championship and gave it to Neville, for him to, for there to be fresh feuds over it. I mean, it may sound stupid, maybe that won't happen, but I think at this point, you see where Neville excels, you see what he's good at and what he's not so good at, and automatically, to me, the Cruiserweight title picture, bringing that belt back and having that, showcased on television is exactly where you need Neville at this point.
Well, that's a fair point. I mean, I don't know if they'll ever do that, but I think, if you ever did want to start that division, I think Neville would be the one to start it with. Let's get into how this match was booked and as far as the winner and what you see for each of these competitors in the future. Where do you see them going if they make the main roster? Raz, let's go to you first.
All right. Well, first of all, everything you guys just said was brilliant about, especially Oliver, about what to do with Neville. I swear you're like in my head, because I was thinking the exact same thing last night. I was like, where's the Cruiserweight division for a guy like Adrian Neville? Because that's exactly what you can do with him, because it's just like what I was talking about a minute ago with Charlotte. Sometimes you can do a good job at hiding people's talents that aren't quite there if you do it right and you let them grow. So, yeah, I think Neville's ready if they book him the right way. And I definitely think Zayn's ready. Zayn's been ready for, honestly, and I'm not trying to sound like an indie mark at all. I'm really not. But everybody knows that I do have an indie history that's known me for a long time. And honestly, he's been in NXT for far too long. He's done a phenomenal job at doing something that Kenta suffered from, where WWE, changes your identity because they want to make you into who they want you to be. Sami Zayn was like, okay, I can't be all generic anymore. Great. Let me figure out who Sami Zayn is. And he's done an absolutely amazing job with it. And if you listen to his reaction, other than the reaction to the Red Arrow itself on Raw, there was no bigger reaction than when Sami Zayn came out. And there were so many ole chants all through Raw. So people are ready for Sami Zayn. I'm ready for Sami Zayn. The problem with it is, and I mentioned this in my column, Sami Zayn should have won the championship last night because of the guys that are now in NXT, because of Kenta, Steen, and Devitt. Sami Zayn is the guy with a history with all three of those new main guys, and he can play off that history and that built-in chemistry that he has with all of them and help them look stronger and help them get used to the WWE lifestyle before he comes up. So that's why I think Sami Zayn is still in NXT. As far as Adrian Neville, there's nothing I can add to Adrian Neville because you guys literally took everything I would have said right out of my mouth. I mean, I'm being perfectly honest, and I don't want to bore people to death. I have nothing to add, but what these two guys said, that's how you take care of Adrian Neville, and you make him ready for the main roster. Tyler Breeze is a really interesting animal because, like I was saying before, he has one of the most unique gimmicks that I've seen in a long, long time. Because he's playing off what is going on with the modern culture right now in terms of everybody's self-absorbed, and you can tweet pictures of yourself every 5 minutes and everybody thinks they're going to be a mega star because they have an Android or an iPhone in their hand. I think it was absolutely brilliant idea, whoever it was, to present a character like this, because in the beginning it may have hidden that he wasn't that strong a competitor, and now he's grown to the point where he is a really strong competitor, and him being on the main roster would be something we've never seen before. The problem is, where do you put him to complement a guy like him? Because his character is so different. You put him in there with Sheamus. Sheamus is going to do the same stuff he does all the time. You put him in there with Ziggler, then you basically have Ziggler trying to carry a feud when he's kind of like, and I think Oliver said this when you guys had the first test hangout with the mock WWE draft. Ziggler's kind of in limbo right now because his gimmick screams heel, but he's a face. And so, is he the right guy to put into a feud with a Tyler Breeze? Like, that's Tyler Breeze's biggest problem. Is he's a phenomenal talent, he could do great things, but unless they're willing to give him an immediate main event push and let him feud with a guy like Rollins or a guy like Ambrose, I just don't know who he would feud with that would help him play off the strengths of his character and play off his skill. Because I think whoever else you put him in the ring with would kind of make him get lost in the crowd. And that's my biggest fear, is that a guy who's actually one of the more unique characters we've seen in a very long time could actually really get lost in the shuffle.
Well, that's a very good point. I think with Zayn and I don't know what they were thinking and what they're going to do with all four guys. I think they'll all be in the main event picture still. But the point I think Raz made about Zayn is so true, where that he's been in NXT way too long. I mean, he should have been called up a while ago, and I think he could benefit so much from when he does make that jump to the main roster. I think he could benefit so much with a feud with somebody like a Dolph Ziggler, or just start him out in the mid card. Don't throw him right into the main event picture because he's not ready for that yet. And I think his character, similar to Dolph Ziggler, he was handed something that he wasn't supposed to succeed with. I mean, a name like Sami Zayn doesn't scream main event talent, similar to the Dolph Ziggler name. Both names are very lackluster and just stupid, in all honesty. So I don't know what they do with him. As far as Tyson Kidd goes, I think he's the odd man out in this situation. Losing again in a big main event match, I don't know where he goes from here. What does he do? Does he eventually make the main roster again? I think Tyson Kidd, and God bless him, I think he is a tremendous athlete, but has no character. He's kind of found something a little bit with this fact thing he says after every sentence. I think that kind of has worked to his advantage, and slowly he's kind of developing some kind of gimmick, but I don't know what he goes from here. What are your thoughts, Oliver? Where does Tyson Kidd go after NXT Takeover?
Tyson Kidd is the guy of the four that I'm most worried about, because unlike the other three, Tyson Kidd has already spent time in WWE's main roster. I think he was there for about 5 years before he got demoted to NXT for some kind of remolding or repackaging. Tyson Kidd is one of those who has that natural raw talent. I don't think anybody can criticize or complain about his in-ring work at this point. Tyson Kidd, I thought, did well last night. I think his heel turn, his heel moniker at the moment has surprised me pleasantly, because when you look at Tyson Kidd, it doesn't scream heel. You think, okay, he's a babyface, tag team guy, whatever, mid-carder. So the heel turn, I think, was refreshing for his character, And but like I said, I'm worried about what WWE will do with him, because I think it, and this goes back to what I was saying before about Neville. If you build up a cruiserweight division, stick people like Kidd in there, stick Breeze in there, stick Zayn in there, stick Tyson Kidd, Heath Slater, even whoever, Sin Cara, whoever it may be. What you have there is you have a whole new almost brand. You have a whole new wing for WWE to operate from. You have whole new faces put into the roster. You have freshness on. You have a fresh angle to work with. Tyson Kidd will be a central part of that. Tyson Kidd is somebody that can work with Natalya. He can go down that kind of storyline. He can go into the cruiserweight division. He can go into the tag team division. So Tyson Kidd, while he does have a lot of possibilities and WWE can do some things with him, I'm concerned for him, because I think WWE just don't seem to have that kind of overriding faith in him. I think WWE see something in Neville. I think WWE see something in Zayn. Tyler Breeze, Raz was talking about Breeze. To me, Breeze is just like a John Morrison type thing. John Morrison, I didn't really like John Morrison, to be honest. He was pretty average to me. He was, good in the ring, sorry, and but he couldn't speak and wasn't entertaining at all for me. I think Breeze is a little more charismatic than John Morrison. So for me, I think, and I see what you're saying about Zayn as well. His name is kind of strange, because he's got the whole European thing going on about him. So all four of them, I don't know if you two agree, but to me, all four of them at this point are very, very unpredictable, and you can take each one of them and you can go down 3 or 4 different lanes, and see where they end up. But it's one of those situations, but you can't really put your finger on what WWE should do with each guy, or where they should go, or what angle they should drop them in. But Tyson Kidd is the one who I'm most worried about. I think fans at this point should be more confident in the likes of Zayn and Neville. I think those two are the gems of the 4. Not necessarily the best, but I think that's what WWE will think are the best two, are the best of the 4.
I agree with most of what you said. I think you kind of undersold Breeze as a talent. I think he in the ring is phenomenal, and I think he can get over with that gimmick on the main roster. He's got a underrated personality and sense of humor, most of all. Raz, what are your thoughts on all 4 guys, especially Tyson Kidd, and where they go in the future, and what he does down the line?
Sorry about that. I've been trying to. We figured out that you can delegate the audio issues that we had earlier by everybody muting their mic when other people are talking. So my mic was muted, and it takes me a minute sometimes to unmute it. But as far as Tyson Kidd, I think Oliver was right. He's just a phenomenal. Or maybe it was you, Eron, that said it. I apologize. But one of you said that he's a phenomenal talent, but he just has no, he doesn't, I don't really see anywhere for him to go. I mean, his current heel run is interesting, but I see in him the same thing I see with Tyler Breeze. You got a guy that could be interesting if they can figure out something to do with him, but where do you put him? And who do you put him in there with? And he's going to get lost in the shuffle again. And it's unfortunate, because he deserves better. But unless you stick a mouthpiece with Tyson Kidd, and you I don't know. Tyson Kidd needs a complete repackaging, which is why they sent him to NXT in the first place. But I just don't know if he has enough of one right now. So I really can't give you an answer there. I want Tyson Kidd to succeed. There's nobody in the business, especially with what he went through, being the last surviving member of the Hart Dungeon. There's nobody that deserves to have success more than Kidd. But I don't know how you make that happen. I really don't. Because there's nobody there that can benefit from a tag team partnership with him that I can think of. So yeah, I don't know what you do with him. But in terms of everybody else, like I said, Breeze is a phenomenal talent, and to be fair, Ollie, I think Aaron hit the nail on the head, and that's what I was about to say. When you have the opportunity, when the network comes to your country in a couple weeks, go back and watch a lot of Breeze's work, because you'll learn that he actually is a far, far better talker than John Morrison. He has not amazing, but very, very solid mic skills. So he has a ton of potential, but I'm just so afraid of him being lost in the shuffle in terms of who do you put him with, because the mid-card scene is so weak with having one champion. Everybody just sort of blends together. And I want to go back to something I said in a column on PWP in a written edition of Reality Between the Ropes. This is why, to me, you unify the Intercontinental and United States titles, because you present two champions in WWE, and then everybody that's not a champion has to work harder and find more within themselves than we know is there. So you give the rest of the main roster a chance to find new direction, and then you can call up a guy like Breeze, because you may find an answer for him that you don't know you have already. Sami Zayn will just carry himself on skill and charisma. He doesn't need anything else right now.
Well, I agree with pretty much almost everything what you said. So let's get into, as far as our overall thoughts, rating. Let's give a 1 through 10 rating on this overall show. Success, not a success. Do you want to see another one of these? Do you not want to see another one of these? Oliver, let's go to you first.
Okay, so going through the card, taking everything into consideration and looking at the show as a whole, I would give NXT Takeover, I would give it a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. I think it was solid. It seemed quite short. It was only an hour and 3/4, I think. So, it was. I felt like, to me, what was involved in it was very well done. The whole card was solid. I just think that maybe they could have stretched it out a little bit more. I think we could have got a little bit more from the show, which is why I didn't give it an 8 completely, or a 9. But definitely what we saw was solid, apart from obviously Board MC and Mojo Rawley and Corbett, the squash match before that. They were the lower points of the show. But the rest was good, so definitely I don't have too many complaints. And by the way, NXT TakeOver was better than Raw, so that says a lot.
Well, fair, very fair. Raz, let's go to you next. Overall rating for NXT TakeOver 2.
7. I mean, it was a really, really well done show for everybody, and I think it goes back to what the interaction we had on Twitter last night. I fully think that NXT is the most consistent product that WWE has right now, in terms of they know where each of their characters are going, and they know where each of the feuds are going. Unlike when you watch Raw and SmackDown and you're like, half the guys on the roster, they don't have a clue what they want to do with them. NXT has a solid direction because Triple H has complete control, and it just screams at me, just like, Vince, just back off and give Triple H all of WWE, because the entire product would be so much better. So yeah, solid 7, great show, and absolutely do as many of these as you can, especially with the new crop of talent that's in NXT right now.
What about you, Aaron?
I'm a little bit of a harsher grader. I didn't think the show was spectacular. I thought Arrival and the first Takeover were much better. From top to bottom, I think the glaring match, or the one that stood out the most, was obviously the main event, the Fatal 4-Way. I'm going to go with a 6.5 because I thought the matches before the Fatal 4-Way and after the tag team match lacked in just flow. I think the entire night for me was a little bit lackluster because the flow of the night didn't really, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I felt like the first Takeover, there were so many just star-studded matches that you were just craving to see. And with this one, there was only about 1 or 2. Like I said, I was super excited for Charlotte and Bayley, maybe a little too excited, and that's why maybe it let me down a little bit. And I thought the only real great match of the night was the Fatal 4-Way. So taking that into account, I would have to give it a 6 or maybe a 6.5 at best. I definitely want to see more of these. I think, but I think they have to be careful on how many they do in a year. I'd like to see them maybe around 6 or maybe 5 or 6 a year. I think that's because I don't want to see this every month. I don't want to see this maybe even every 2 months. But make it to where it comes in the middle of, or put them out there when it's in those slow parts of the year. Like, for example, now after SummerSlam, when the big main or pay-per-views aren't happening, like Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania, put them in those lackluster months where there's really not much going on. And like Raz said, this is probably the most consistent show WWE does on a regular basis. And of course, I'm going to have to praise my guy Triple H for kind of leading the way as far as that happening. I mean, the credit goes to him because he has far and above over-exceeded expectations. I mean, when people thought Triple H was going to take over, some parts of talent and the roster, people thought he was going to be booked as this Superman character where he was going to book himself into, feuds and stuff like that where, he was going to come out looking great. But that's quite the opposite. He has put over more talent than putting himself over. He's created this entity and this brand of NXT, which rivals Raw most weeks. I mean, if you were to compare Raw and NXT every week, you could probably say that NXT is more consistent and definitely a much better show. And I think that parts of that, and actually, let me throw it to you guys. Why do you think NXT is a better product overall than Raw on a consistent basis? Raz, let's go to you first.
Sorry about that, the mic remuted itself for some reason. I was saying it's simple, really. The reason that NXT is the strongest product right now is just because there's not too many cooks in the kitchen. There's Triple H is the main booker. There's William Regal, who he allows to have some say, and that's it. There's not, Vince McMahon, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, all these different layers of creativity. Because when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, you don't settle on a direction. And NXT is so solid because it doesn't have all of these different egos that it has to pay attention to. It can just focus and let itself be one solid direction. And we're probably going to talk about this in a minute, and I know it was recently brought up in a column over on the website. That's why Raw needs to be 2 hours instead of 3 hours, because there's just not enough of a strong enough direction right now. They're trying to do too much with too. They're trying to do a lot with a little, in terms of they have a lot of talent, but there's just no direction for a lot of the talent, as opposed to NXT where it's just like, boom, Tyler Breeze is an egotistical guy who you think is just that, and then he's a phenomenal worker. Sami Zayn, you look at him and you think, he's just a smiley baby face that people love, and then his in-ring skills blow you away. Adrian Neville, you look at him and you see a guy that just lets his action speak for itself. That's what you have in NXT that you don't have anywhere else right now. It's just flat out consistency all over the place. And that's why it's the best thing that WWE does. And you're exactly right, Eron, when you said that it rivals Raw and overshadows Raw. I look way more forward to NXT than anything that WWE does right now. And that's sad because people that don't have the network can't even see it. Right?
It's something where, and I just did the math real quick. WWE's overall content and the number of hours they have to produce a week is 9 hours of content every week. From Raw, SmackDown, main event, superstars, and NXT. That is just too much product to give out on a consistent basis every single week, not counting pay-per-views. I mean, they just don't have the talent to do that right now, especially on the main roster. They don't have the talent to put on a 3-hour show consistently every week. That's just not. They just don't have that right now. Oliver, let's go to you. Why do you think NXT is more consistent than Raw, or do you even think that?
Oh yeah, definitely it is. Yeah. On top of what Raz says, because Raz is right too, I want to add 2 points to this. The first one is that, and it's kind of obvious, but also an underlining point here, that everybody in NXT is, I would say, more motivated than everybody on Raw, because they haven't quite made it to the top, to that stage yet. They are motivated to get higher, so therefore they try their best to be as good as they can be. I think that's a small reason why NXT is so good. And my second reason is that, for me, NXT, everything about NXT feels fresh. Unlike Raw, you have the same people in the same matches all the time, you have the same people in the main events all the time, and you have the same people in the championship pictures all the time. So if you take the main event right now, you have Randy Orton, who's awful, and you have John Cena, you have Bryan when he's back, which isn't too bad. There doesn't seem to be much variation, whereas when you go down to NXT, you have at each level you have new. Everybody feels so new, and obviously they are newer. So that NXT is automatically revolutionized and helped by the fact that everybody feels so fresh. So when you're watching NXT, you don't think, oh god, this guy again. You think, okay, this guy's new. Let's see what he can do. And so you kind of flip it, and there's more positivity towards what you're watching. So I think one of the secrets to NXT is just honestly just the fact that everybody there is motivated and everybody there is fresh, and those for me are two really important factors in why NXT is more consistent and also feels more organized than Raw as well.
And why might that be, Oliver? Why is that more organized? Who's responsible for that?
Well, I think it was you said a minute ago. You were talking, or was it Raz? I can't remember. Who was saying about Raw has so many layers of creativity. There's almost too many cooks spoil the broth, is the saying. And you have different people fighting over this should happen or this should happen. Whereas on NXT, it's very streamlined in terms of the creative perspective. So when you're watching NXT, what you're watching is a product assembled by less minds, meaning that there's more agreement. And whereas when you're watching Raw, what you're watching is essentially 6 people want this to happen or 5 people want this to happen. So it's kind of messy sometimes. And obviously, we've heard so many times throughout the years of the Raw script being changed as Raw is rolling. So you're in the first hour, and then they're still writing the third hour, and that's not good. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. With NXT though, everything is put to bed before the show, so everybody knows what they're doing, and there's much more clarity from the performers all the way up to the top of the hierarchy. There's a lot of clarity in NXT, and that's why I think that NXT at this point is more is exactly what it should be. Is exactly what it needs to be instead of Raw. Although obviously the talent on Raw is better. When you have so much talent, and this isn't just the writers' fault here. When you have so much talent on a roster, sometimes you have to put people to the side, and sometimes you have to put people here. And fans don't want to see this; they want to see the guy here. And they, it's just people get in the way of each other, and it's difficult to place each member of the roster where fans want them to be. Whereas with NXT, you know where your guys are, you know where they need to get to, and there's much more, of a clearer layout, and you feel like you can almost follow their progress much easier. There's no confusion, and there's less, nonsensical booking. So, yeah, for me, NXT is better for all of those reasons at this point.
Well, that's obviously a fair point. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head where, that's exactly why they're two different entities and they're two different brands. And we've heard a little bit about how WWE wants to make NXT its own brand. I think I remember listening to a Triple H conference call earlier this week before NXT Takeover 2, and he even kind of touched on how they want to make this its own kind of brand, and similar to the ECW brand that was kind of separate from Raw and SmackDown, and but I think this is a completely different animal. And I think we have to be careful as well. I think they have to be careful with putting NXT superstars on Raw. I didn't really feel great about seeing them on Raw, kind of promoting NXT Takeover, because I think one of the reasons why NXT is so great is because this exclusive kind of community inside WWE. People that watch NXT kind of have their own little thing here, and this is for the internet fans or the hardcore fans that have their little NXT over here. And I think bringing that to Raw might take away from some of the luster of what NXT is. I think we've spent more than enough time on NXT Takeover. Let's get into Monday Night Raw a little bit. We're not going to go through Raw completely because it wasn't that great of a show, but let's get into some highs and lows, some things that you kind of are going to take away from Raw as positive and negative. Raz Man, let's go to you first.
All right, well, the bottom line for me is I would have to struggle to find any positive on Monday Night Raw that was not the John Cena promo. I mean, most people don't like Cena, and I'm tired of Cena too. I wish the WWE would not do what they do with him in terms of you have to be this guy, but facts are facts, and Cena isn't going to change. But that's what makes Cena so brilliant. It's because he knows he isn't going to change, and he's still able to make it work. That promo that he cut with another great mic skill guy, probably the greatest mic skill guy in the last decade, bar none, and Paul Heyman, that thing made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I'm not kidding. That was probably the best promo I've seen on Raw in a very, very long time. But that's really the only positive. The rest of Raw was a train wreck. No direction. Total Divas being shoved down my throat. I can't even stand to watch Total Divas when it's on anymore, let alone see it on Raw. Nikki Bella can't act. She has no business being in a main feud. That's why they panicked and had to throw AJ Lee and Paige into the feud, because the Bellas, they're not strong enough to carry a feud on their own, and that's why they shouldn't have been split up in the first place. Like I said back when I predicted SummerSlam, that it was a mistake to do it, and now they're paying for it. So yeah, I don't know what more I can say. Raw to me was a train wreck, and it continues to be a train wreck, and I don't know how you fix it right now. I really don't.
And that's a good point. We've kind of gone through, since SummerSlam, I think there hasn't been a Raw that sticks out in my mind as being good. So I don't know if they're kind of, I hate to accuse WWE of kind of packing it in, but they almost seem like they are with this road to Night of Champions. If you look at the match card for Night of Champions, I had it somewhere around here. It's a lot of matches that are either thrown together that don't really make much sense, or it's really just, I think WWE sold on Cena and Brock will sell this pay-per-view, so let's just throw a bunch of good matches on there just to see where it goes. Nonetheless, the matches on the card are going to be good. I think Orton and Jericho, which I predicted, cough cough, will be a pretty decent match. I think Rollins and Reigns, that'll be interesting. I'm interested to see what they'll do. But as far as Raw topics and what I took away from Raw, I thought the Bray Wyatt Jericho steel cage match was interesting. I think Bray Wyatt finally overcoming Jericho. I didn't like the way they did it, and I kind of don't want to go into a big rant about this, but I don't see why WWE can't let Bray Wyatt win without some kind of shenanigan, fluky kind of win. He beat Jericho by just rolling out of the cage. I mean, he didn't really do anything. He hit Jericho and then rolled off onto the ground. I don't see why he couldn't have just beat Jericho, just beat him, get out of the cage and win. I understand he's a heel and he needs to kind of win in those kind of ways, but I don't understand why he can't get a clean victory like he did at SummerSlam. That's one thing I took away from Raw as far as being something that I didn't really like. Raz, you touched on John Cena in that promo. I thought that was an awesome promo by Paul Heyman and John Cena. I really like that they kind of try to, and we've seen this before with Cena, where they try to bring him over to the quote-unquote dark side. And I think if they ever do pull the trigger on this, which I think they won't, I don't think they'll ever turn John Cena heel. I think Paul Heyman's got to do it. I think if you're going to do it, have him become a Paul Heyman guy. Have him turn his back on the C Nation and go align himself with Paul Heyman. I think if you were going to do it, that'd be the way to do it. As far as something I took away that was bad from Raw, that Jerry Springer segment was awful. I mean, if you want to talk about cringe-worthy segments, that was it. I mean, it was just awkward. It was weird. The Bellas, they have proven that they cannot talk on the microphone. I do think Nikki is a little bit better than Brie as far as being able to sell her emotions in some kind of way. But Brie Bella, I don't know what they're going to do with her because she just can't act. And honestly, neither of them can act. I don't know what they do with that. And I don't know why they're not feuding with each other. I don't know why Nikki Bella's been thrown into this triple threat match. It doesn't make much sense to me. And overall, like you guys said, Raw was a dud, and it continues to be a dud. And you know, I don't know where they go from here, trying to book this go-home show next week. Oliver, let's go to you. What were your kind of highs and lows from Monday Night Raw?
Well, the good thing about the go-home show next week is that it can only be better, right? The cage match was good. I enjoyed the cage match. I don't think anybody can really have too many complaints about the cage match. People complain about Bray Wyatt's work in the ring surprisingly often, but I thought the cage match was really, really well done. The Jerry Springer segment was one of the, and I'm not lying here, was one of the worst Raw segments I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've seen a lot of Raws. I can't stand, obviously, as everybody knows who knows me and who's read my work, I'm a lifelong Kane fan, but I cannot stand his corporate shit. It's awful. I can't stand it. I'm sick of seeing Randy Orton in the main event as well. Every time he walks down the ramp with his crap music playing, his really slow, methodical pace that he's got going on, which is awful and boring. I just know I'm going to be bored for the next 25 minutes. I really can't point out anything good about the show at all. I'm getting really bored of Stephanie McMahon. I think she gets worse now every week, even though she is a good heel. I think she's peaked, and I think she's from the last sort of 5 weeks she's been terrible, honestly, for me. Let me think. Talking about Raw, I mean, there were no Bo Dallas, no Jack Swagger. I was kind of confused as to why there was no Jack Swagger or Bo Dallas. Not that they would have turned the show into a 5-star show or anything like that, but if you're going to have them in a rivalry, then at least keep it consistent. You know what I mean? There's the only thing worse than a bad rivalry is a bad rivalry that stops and starts and stops and starts. So I wondered why they weren't on the show. But yeah, Raw to me was nothing at all to write home about. The last 5 have been abysmal. Seriously, so bad, and I'm really, I've said this so many times now. I don't want to sound like a beaten dog here, but the poor quality of Raw is made worse by the commentary. JBL and Jerry the King Lawler are just so bad at this point. They are so bad. I'm so sick of listening to them. I often mute Raw because I can't stand listening to them. They make the entire thing worse. Michael Cole, sometimes he's very good, sometimes he's awful. Jerry Lawler and JBL are always bad at this point. They're such beaten dogs that have nothing new or interesting to say ever. And yeah, I'm now, and it's sad to say because obviously wrestling is my number 2 sport. So years I've been excited about it. Every pay-per-view, every Raw, but now I really feel like getting through 3 hours of Raw is now more of a task, like more of a chore than a medium of enjoyment, if you get what I'm saying. I read your article about Raw reverting back to 2 hours, and it was completely correct. Raw should be 2 hours. The 3 hour thing is played out. The 3 hour thing is done, and as we all knew, 3 hours was always going to be too much. And you can tell that WWE, I get the impression watching Raw now that WWE are almost trying to justify the 3 hours by filling as much crap as they possibly can. It's them being stubborn. They don't want to admit that 3 hours is too long, so they're just throwing whatever they can in for the 3 hours to try and make people want to watch. When in reality, it's now painfully obvious that it should be 2 hours. The show doesn't make sense for 3 hours. It really doesn't, and there's no structure for 3 hours. You can have good segments and you can have good matches, but really, Raw needs to be 2 hours now. We need to have less footage. We need to have less awful promos. We need to have no more Jerry Springer. We don't need that at all. We don't need the Bella's brother coming out who nobody cares or knows anything about. And I'm not excited for watching Raw at all anymore, which is really sad. I'm looking forward to Night of Champions because I like the card. And just to summarise what I said, just one more thing. I feel a little strange about the whole Jericho Orton match being added after seemingly nothing. They had a small interaction on Raw last week. They had a small interaction on Raw this week, and that all of a sudden constitutes a pay-per-view match. Whatever. I mean, it's something to watch. It's something to fill the time. I won't really be watching it because I can't stand Randy Orton matches. I don't care how good a wrestler he is. He bores me to tears. So I won't be watching that match. And I like the card apart from that. But honestly, the go home show can't be worse at this point, which is kind of a good thing, but also slightly disappointing.
And one thing I almost failed to bring up is the part of Raw where I was so excited about, and I've been kind of driving this bandwagon by myself. I haven't really seen anybody else kind of jump on. Is I love Slater Gator. I mean, I might be the only one that does, but I love Heath Slater and Titus O'Neil together. I don't know what you guys think, but they have such a good chemistry together. And I don't know if you saw the after show for Hulk Hogan's birthday a while back, where they brought out the cake and they ended up throwing it at each other. And I think just their dynamic, and their ability to play off each other, and they kind of are able to showcase their talents on like Superstars and main event. Which is disappointing to me, but I really like that group, and I hope that they can get some kind of traction. I doubt it. I mean, they've been featured in Raw for the last couple of weeks, but it's kind of been in throwaway segments. I don't know what you guys think, but I love Heath Slater and Titus O'Neil. Raz, you've kind of been out of the conversation for a little bit. Any thoughts on Raw and what, if you wanted to add anything to that?
You guys actually reminded me. I'm glad that I was out of the conversation for a while. My Raw thoughts were so short originally because the show just wasn't memorable to me. But you guys did a better job of remembering what was actually there. And the first thing that jumps out at me is Orton Jericho. And the reason it jumps out at me is because one of the very first things I did here, well, actually, not one of the very first thing I did here as part of PWP was book SummerSlam. Mock book SummerSlam. And I said during that article that Randy Orton hit his ceiling too high. There's nothing that they can do with Randy Orton in terms of, making him a success anymore. But here's the thing about Orton Jericho. Orton Jericho actually has the potential to be really, really good because it is. I'm sorry, my Facebook's going nuts. It's just you guys agreeing with what I'm saying. Sorry. Orton Jericho actually could be really, really interesting because here's a case of you don't have to overwork with yourself. You have two established veterans that have been there, done that, And for the first time in a long time, it's not, especially with Jericho. I mean, this is going to be Jericho's first opportunity in like 4 years on the main roster to not have to try and carry somebody in a match or in a potential feud if they do more than one match. So Orton and Jericho have not had much interaction one-on-one in a very long time. The most memorable interaction they had was when Randy Orton was WWE Champion and Jericho made his second big return to WWE with the whole Save Us Y2J thing. That was the last time I remember Orton and Jericho in a feud together. So, because we haven't seen these guys for a long time, I'm actually really intrigued by it. Oliver was right when he said it came out of nowhere, but in this case, it could potentially not be a bad thing. And this could be the first time in a long time that I don't fast forward through a Jericho match. And something that you guys may not know about me, because I haven't really had a chance to talk about it, because unfortunately the Jericho-Wyatt feud just didn't work. They just dropped the ball with it, and so many things went wrong with it. But Jericho's my favorite superstar of all time. Always has been, always will be. So to finally see him hopefully do something that he can sink his teeth into has me excited. Now, in terms of Slater Gator, that one kind of took me by surprise. I gotta say that I didn't expect that to be a conversation that we would have today. But Heath Slater's a guy that they've been trying to do something with for a long time, and they may have found it with this whole thing. I mean, they do have a lot of I did see the Hulk Hogan segment that you talked about, and they have good chemistry together. The only problem is, are we going to get the potential to see it grow? Because there's a lot of rumors that Titus O'Neil is ready to transfer away from wrestling. Titus O'Neil wants to become a football coach because he's frustrated by WWE not doing anything with him since Darren Young's injury. So are we actually going to get to see Slater Gator actually grow into something? If it does, it could be entertaining as heck. For how long, I don't know. But yeah, I agree with Aaron. There's a lot of potential there, but I just don't know if we're going to see it flex its muscle any. And I said it before, and I'll just end on this. Raw is too long, and to go back to what Aaron said about why Paige and AJ are in the Bella Twins feud, it's what I said in the beginning when we started Raw. The Bella Twins aren't strong enough by themselves to carry a feud. WWE is hitting the panic button, and they have to put their two best workers in a match in the middle of the feud, not a match, because there hasn't been a match yet. But they have to put their two best workers in the middle of this feud because that's how bad their quote-unquote second feud was. And that's as simple as it gets there. The Authority, I think Oliver touched on Stephanie McMahon getting a little stale. The entire Authority is getting stale. I mean, Triple H is phenomenal on the mic, always has been, always will be. Stephanie can be really good on the mic when she has the right people to work with, but we've seen the Authority for far too long now.
Triple H is not phenomenal on the mic. He's crap on the mic. He's good at everything else, but he's crap on the mic.
Well, I guess we just have to agree to disagree on that, because I've always loved Triple H's promos. I think Triple H, especially when he's a heel, when he's a face, he's crap on the mic. But as a heel, nobody knows how to get the crowd in the palm of their hand better than Triple H. Absolutely nobody. As a heel, in my opinion. So
The Rock, Paul Heyman.
Oliver's very lucky. Oliver's very lucky.
I'm talking about guys that are on the roster right now. Like, I'm not talking about guys that aren't there anymore.
I was going to say, Oliver is very lucky we don't have more time, because the bashing of Triple H I will not accept. So we're going to move on, and I'm not going to address that, because I think we all know how I feel about Triple H. He's my, like Raz Man said, he's my favorite wrestler of all time. I'm a Triple H mark for, I just think he's so underrated as far as the way he's held in the public eye from wrestling fans. Well, that's a different topic for a different day. So overall, let's give a rating for Monday Night Raw. Let's go to you, Raz Man, first. Your overall rating for Monday Night Raw and what you thought of the show overall from 1 to 10.
I didn't take much away from it. Like I said, it was a terrible show, and they really have so much work to do overall in terms of this is the go-home show for Night of Champions now, and other than Lesnar, Cena being intriguing for the wrong reasons because of fear of Cena actually winning the title, which we have to save that for next week because I'm sure we'll cover Night of Champions at length the night before the pay-per-view. But, yeah. I didn't take much away from Raw, so I have to give it like a 3, and that's just being incredibly generous. But going back really quickly to something that was said earlier, I think that you have the potential maybe to do something that no one's going to see coming, and that's allowing Jericho and Orton to steal the show. Because it's just a thrown together match that no one was invested in, and it probably is going to be one of the stronger matches on the card. So, yeah, that's what I took away from it. Oh, and the fact that Bray Wyatt still has absolutely no direction. And the reason he has absolutely no direction is because he should be a face, not a heel. Everything about his character screams face, from saying the city's name when he comes out to the cell phone fireflies. The whole thing is Bray Wyatt's a face. But WWE is insisting on sticking him with the Wyatt family still and having him be a heel, and that's why he's gone nowhere for such a long time. So yeah, that's why I took away from him.
And he doesn't even have a match at Night of Champions. So what,
Exactly.
That's the perfect point you made there about Bray Wyatt. Oliver, let's go to you. Your overall rating for Monday Night Raw.
1.5 to 2. I think the last 5 Raws have been a 1 or 2 out of 10. There's been nothing to look forward to. Nothing to appreciate really. I think 2 is sufficient for what we saw on Monday. We can only really get better at this point. So hopefully the next Raw will be something a little more than a 2. And just to clarify, just before we go, I like Triple H and I understand why you like him. I think he's great. So I hope we're still friends. I just on the mic, everything else is great. I just on the mic, and also I'm surprised about the whole Raz being a huge Jericho fan. I've always liked Chris Jericho. I thought he was great. I mean, your favorite wrestler is Triple H. Raz is just Chris Jericho. For me, it's Kane. So as a kind of a there's a bit of a variation there, which is good. But Raw, horrible. 2 out of 10.
Yeah, the very first thing I ever did on the internet, actually, in terms of being a writer, was a review for Breaking the Code Behind the Walls of Chris Jericho. So, yeah, I'm a huge Jericho mark, and yeah. So I'm glad that that was an interesting point for today. Me bringing that to the table. But you guys, we've all said it. Raw is just terrible right now, and WWE's in trouble. Because WWE did the right thing by letting Brock Lesnar win the title, but because Brock Lesnar's not there every week, it means that everybody should step up their game and give us a reason to tune in to these shows, other than the fact that it's already paid for. And right now, that's the only reason that we have to watch Night of Champions is because we already know we already paid for it, but in the case of Oliver, he'll pay for it in a week. But it's a monthly bill, and we don't have to stress over, okay, do I really need to mess with watching this pay-per-view? It's there, so we're gonna watch it anyway. But they need a lot of work to get people to tune into the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I agree with you. And with the WWE Network, I just re-upped my membership 2 nights ago, I think, just for NXT Takeover. I just wanted to see. I had to see the pay-per-view or the special event, whatever they want to call it. And I think it, this is rare. You'll rarely see me say this, or you'll rarely see me bashing my own guy, Triple H. But when I found out that he said that he's a little angry with people for not subscribing to the network because they're cheap wrestling fans, I thought that was a huge slap in the face to guys like me who, for example, I am a struggling college kid, struggling for cash. I don't have a job right now because I'm studying on schoolwork or focusing on schoolwork. So for him to, say that I'm cheap or we're cheap as wrestling fans was really a big slap in the face, because the little money I do make from, let's say, babysitting or doing whatever, I put $10 of that every month to the WWE Network. So I found that very disrespectful as far as the network goes. Let's wrap up here because we've been going on for a very long time. Oliver, let's go to you first. Anything to plug that you have, something coming up for PWP or anything like that?
Okay. So my next article up on PWP, I'm not sure when it will be. I think I'm aiming for tomorrow night, so it'll be around 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's midnight here. Go follow me on Twitter. The @ is right there in front of you, Twitter handle, and obviously at team_PWP. Visit ProWrestlingPowerhouse.com. Visit London, where I am, and God save the Queen.
All right, that was just lovely. Raz, anything to plug?
I'm sorry, you guys. Google just doesn't like me tonight. First, it was like the echoing, and then it was figuring out how to stop the echoing. And when I do, it doesn't want to let me unmute the mic or turn the mic back on. But anyway, next article for the site's going to be one that really, it's going to determine, are people really appreciative of me as a fan and as a guy that's loved the sport for 30 years? Or are they just going to look at a subject title and just be automatically turned off? Because I'm going to be talking about CM Punk. And I'm going to be talking about why fans should not want CM Punk back in WWE. So I welcome the criticism, and I can't wait to see what kind of feedback the site gets from that. Because that's going to be, I think, a lot for people to digest. Because you're talking about a guy who was one of the biggest Punk supporters originally, and who has completely flipped the script. So there's that. You can follow me on Twitter and like me on Facebook under Raz Man's Reality. I write for other wrestling sites, eWrestling News, and Smart Out Moment as well. I'm not nearly as active there as I am on PWP because PWP came first, and I like the PWP atmosphere. I like what we do and the fact that we don't try to be anything but fans. So I'm not saying that I probably shouldn't have said it that way, because I don't want, if my guys from the other two websites are watching, don't get mad at me. I'm not saying I don't care about what I do over there, but I'm just saying I really enjoy being here. I'm really grateful to be here, and every time I sit down to write an article or do anything for PWP, I get that tremendous amount of joy out of it, even when someone thoroughly disagrees with me, like Oliver, because that's not wrestling fans, going back to what I said in the recent column, that's not complaining just for the sake of complaining. That's just wrestling fans having a reason behind what they're saying and allowing other fans to come back at them. And that's what this whole site is about. It's about unbiased, unfiltered opinions on professional wrestling, because that's what we do.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Like you said, PWP is a place where you can come and write and not be judged. Well, you will be judged, but you can just air out your grievances. You can do whatever. You can say whatever. We don't, like you said, we don't claim to be experts at wrestling. We don't claim to be analysts or anything like that. We claim to be, Oliver. But we're just wrestling fans. We like to talk wrestling. We like to write about wrestling. And we don't, and Jay Leto always preaches this, and I've preached this a bunch of times. We are not like WrestleZone. We don't want to be like WrestleZone. We don't want to be like Bleacher Report. We strictly cover opinion-based articles. We do not follow dirt sheets. We don't do the copy and paste thing. We stick to what we know and what we love to do, and that's talk about wrestling. So that's why you should support PWP and be a follower and support us as much as we can. So that's about it. We don't really have much else to talk about. We've been going for about 2 hours. I know it's late over there in London. So let's see where this goes. Let's see if we'll have another one of these. Expected to probably be same time next week around Friday or Saturday, roughly the same time. Hopefully we can have Joel Bryan on here or some other PWP contributors. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and make sure you go follow Pro Wrestling Powerhouse on Twitter at @team_PWP and go to ProWrestlingPowerhouse.com.
Thank you.
Later. Thank you.